Just look at how great the timing works out. It is exactly 11 o'clock, zeros across the board. Welcome to a start of week Monday edition of the Mornings with Ed show on the all-new Voice of Laguna. Delighted that the sun is out. It's a beautiful, sunny, crisp, clear day. Perfect spring conditions and beautiful timing for poetry. Fire in My Head, Flame in My Heart, poems for the Pyrocene by Ellen Girardeau Kempler. We welcome Ellen into the studio right now. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. I just went on a beach walk.
And how was it?
It was fantastic. And I saw my favorite dogs down there. And also I got a Habibi coffee at Equator Coffee, which I would highly recommend. I
have had it. I absolutely love it. There's everything about them I love. I love Equator Coffee. I love their products. Number one.
And they give a discount for History Society members.
Really?
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay. And you picked a perfect morning to take a walk along the beach. Is there nothing more inspiring than? And first of all, I want to let our audience know you're quite gifted, and the poetry that I read in your book is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
And your inspiration comes sometimes from these walks?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that people see this and they think that it's going to be a depressing book, but in actuality, it's sort of a chronicle of living in one place for 27 years and seeing the changes over time and experiencing some of the things that people living here have experienced. So like the huge flood that we had in 2008 where the canyon slid into Laguna Canyon Road, and we had a lifeguard going in there and saving a baby that looked like a mud blob, you know, and it was on national news, and everybody was calling me and saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Because that was back when we had landlines.
Right.
And our car floated down the street that day. So anyway, and then, you know, fires. Oh my God, I wasn't here for 1993, but we lived in LA and we have friends in both the communities that burned in January, and it was so hard to watch and hear all that news because that's not supposed to be fire season, you know? So CAL FIRE says we have a fire year now.
Yeah, it's the entire year.
And so that's the impetus for choosing this word pyrocene for my book instead of Anthropocene, which a lot of people use. A lot of people use Anthropocene because it's the era when we've changed the environment. So like the industrial age, basically.
Right.
And but everybody experiences it differently. So if you're living in hurricane country, you would be talking about something different. If you're living in Florida, you're talking about these floods that happen just because the tide is rising so high and it's flat. So here, I feel like this whole area of California and the West Coast has been shaped by fire, but the problem now is that fires are getting a lot fiercer, a lot harder to fight, a lot more frequent, and we saw that in Lahaina with all that invasive brush burning, and then you have these golf courses right next to them taking a lot of the water, and so we have a lot of people who are saying, oh, just forget about the people who don't have resources. We need them. We need them. So we've got to come back and balance and think about trying to help everyone.
Let's talk about Lahaina for a second, and that the incredible similarity of the topography of Lahaina and Laguna Beach. They are so similar, yet our council member, our city government is aware that the entire city of Laguna Beach needs to be protected or needs to be protected from fires, basically. And Lahaina, that wasn't the case.
Well, I think, you have that situation with the sparking electrical.
Right.
You have the invasive species. You have people who aren't used to wildfires.
Right.
And you have a really bad emergency alert system.
Right.
So that's why it was so deadly, because it was just not expected. They thought they'd put that fire out, and then it popped up again. And here you have this problem with all these people living all over, tucked in these hills and canyons. And how do you get out? I mean, if we only had flat land and the fire just moved through and burned everything, we could get out. But we have hills, so who knows what's going to happen when that happens to us.
In putting this book together, Fire in My Head, Flame in My Heart, the poems inside, the poem as a poem occurs to you, you write it, and do you put it aside, and then this is a compilation, or was this just everything?
No. It's really a process. It's like making art. You have to put things together.
Right.
So I had a bunch of poems that I've been writing all these years, and a lot of them have been published before as separate things, because each poem is its own thing.
Right.
So it's just like putting a quilt together. So you have to sort of decide, well, how am I going to tell a story with what I have?
Right.
And then you can also fill in the blanks. So that's one reason why I divided it into 4 parts. And I have little fragments in between the sections, some of which I'd already written and some of which I had to write. And I decided for the topics, I'd start with the fire, and the drought, because those are very important here. So thirsting, and then the second part is mourning. So it's not only the atmospheric rivers, the flooding, the rain, the rising tide, all of that, but it's also grief.
Right. I felt grief in this book.
Yeah, and then coping is what we do to make ourselves feel better. So in my case, I've become very OCD about picking up trash on the beach.
Right.
And also I go out, whenever I'm out, every day. I've been doing this for a long time, but I always try to notice something, take a photo of it, and then come back home and look at the photo and write something in response to it. For a long time it was haiku, but it's changing a lot, and those might become larger poems too, but they're usually about things that I see that just look interesting or beautiful to me.
Right. And when writing or when feeling the most creative, there are times where I feel a lot of creativity, and there are times where I feel less than that.
Yeah.
But in your most creative, can you write from a dark place as much as a light place?
Well, it's sort of interesting because they talk about being in flow,
Right.
a lot of writers. And so a lot of times I'll write to prompts. I'm in a few Zoom workshops.
Right.
And you start out, you're writing something, and you just keep going, and you sort of turn off the judgment center of your brain. You turn off, and you just try to go with whatever you're doing.
Right.
And it might take you to someplace different than you thought you'd go with it.
Right.
And then there's this amount of, going back to it and taking things out and adding, it's really fluid.
Can you keep, and I'm fascinated by your process, can you keep the process moving with an interruption? You're
Well,
married.
I have to.
You're
because
married.
I'm married to the most extroverted extrovert in the world. And so that's one reason why I developed this process, because it's a mindfulness process.
Right.
So it's a process of training my brain to notice things. And this is something that poet Mary Oliver says. She says, her poem, in one of her poems, it was called Instructions for Living a Life. And she said, pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. So the idea is that I can sit down when I come back and I can say, don't bother me, I'm writing right now.
Right.
And they know it's probably going to take me about a half an hour to an hour maybe. Sometimes I have to research, like I'll see something on the beach, I don't know what it is, I have to ID it, or a bird or something, or flower. And so that they've learned, they don't interrupt me. Or I go somewhere, like I go in my backyard and sit down.
When I prepare a segment in the morning to talk to the audience about whatever that segment is, I am spending the day before probably turning phrases in my head.
Exactly.
And you do the same? Is that
Yeah, and I always say, you know how dolphins go to sleep with half their brains
Right.
so that they can watch with the other half?
Right.
So I always say I have a dolphin brain because I can be listening to my husband sort of with one ear, and then in the other ear I can be writing something. And now that I have my phone, which, you know, a lot of people say phones aren't good for creative work, but I really do think that they're great because not only can I take pictures, I mean, I can't even draw a curved line with a compass. I'm horrible.
Right.
So being able to take a photo and edit it and make it into something beautiful, that's a superpower for me because I learned that I do have a good eye, even though I can't render it any other way than taking a photo. And then the other thing is, it's just, you can write notes on your phone. So you know how you have things come through your head,
Right.
and as you get older, you know you won't remember that.
Right.
And it could just be sort of useless, you
Right.
know, but it could be something important, and it might just be a few words. And so you just,
Yeah.
I have notes.
I absolutely, completely understand that right there.
And when someone tells me about a book or a TV show or something, I keep, you know, I write it down. It only takes 2 seconds.
I was fascinated by a line in the poem ending with a line by Robert Frost.
Uh-huh.
I was fascinated with the line that the gods delivered smoke and pollution, melting glaciers and rising oceans. And I thought to myself when I read that, and it goes on, and I'm going to ask you to read some poetry for us
Okay.
later if you don't mind. But I thought to myself, she's just caught everything that was the darkest about us in that moment.
Well, and the thing is, it's not really dark because we didn't know.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's all advancement. I mean, if you want to talk about technology, you could go back to the Ice Age. In that time, fire was a technology, you know, and so it sort of led us to this point. But now, because there's so many of us, and because we're using these technologies, and there's so many technologies, and they all have side effects. I mean, it's almost like when you're prescribed something and they say you need to check for side effects with other, you know,
Right.
interactions with other drugs. Well, you know, there are all kinds of interactions, like AI. They say now that if you say please and thank you when you talk to your AI, that it's really bad for the climate because it increases the amount of cloud space that has to be used.
Wow. Okay. Wow. And I say please and thank you. I do too.
I do too.
So I dictate into my phone. I don't necessarily
Right.
text, but I
Right.
dictate. And then when Siri is done, I say
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I will stop doing that. I'm absolutely going to stop doing that.
I don't know what it's going to do for civil discourse, but you know, we do have to. I think the whole message with climate right now is moderation. So, I mean, Greta Thunberg is not really getting a lot of fans by scolding people.
Right.
But if there's
that-
anything you can do to use less of whatever you're using and buy less and, you know, take less, then that's probably a good idea.
She's got a fan here because
I love her too,
Yeah.
but maybe I'm not as susceptible to being scolded because I feel like I'm doing a lot, you know.
Right. The Southern California Equinox poem
Yeah.
that you wrote. Tell us about that.
Well, which one is that?
Spring arrives as a flute note.
Oh, okay. That's actually my favorite poem in the book because it's hopeful.
Yeah.
And that's an example of going somewhere with a poem that I didn't expect. So I met a man when I was in Ireland going to a poetry workshop. He's a professor at a Irish university, and he's just very supportive, and we've read each other's work, and he's published several books. It was a long time ago when we met, but during COVID he would have these things with his students, and he invited me to come to one of them because it was an award ceremony. And this Irish poet named Michael Longley, who just died, he was very old at the time. He was already in his 80s, and he lived in Belfast, and he was a poet of the Troubles.
Okay.
And he's very important. And Derek sent me a book of his poems, and I noticed he would always hyphenate these words, and so I just they're called kennings. They're like Whale Road is sea, and it's an old thing to do, but he does it a lot, and he does it very well. So I just was reading one of his poems, and I thought, I love that flute note. It's so beautiful, and so I stole it, and so I thought I should acknowledge him for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I do love, and it is among my favorite poems in the book. It really is. I'm taken by how wide-ranging these poems are. It isn't just one, and yes, the subject matter is fire and flames, but the environment is what I get from it.
Right.
But there is so much. The breadth and width of what you cover within that is just so wide-ranging.
Well, it's witnessing, so I'm talking about living in a fire-prone area in a sort of age of fire, an age of Anthropocene change. But it's me. It's my experience. So in a way, it's very narrow. But on the other hand, it's very wide. And what do you do to stay connected and stay hopeful? Well, for me, it's I don't want to travel places. I don't have a bucket list. I have a life list. So there are things I want to experience in my lifetime. So I will go because I want to experience those things. So like going to see a total eclipse near where I grew up in Oregon in 2017 and camping in a tulip field to see it with a bunch of people I know. Going to a writer's retreat in Iceland and arranging a group trip for some writers to go out in the countryside and see the Northern Lights. There are, and then anywhere you go, the things that are different about that place that inspire you. So like eating oysters in Croatia, or, there are a lot of things that I don't want to check off. I just want to experience, and I can't just experience them by staying here.
Right. The Ellen Kempler that is sitting in front of me, is that who Ellen Kempler has always been? Were you destined to write poetry as a child?
Yeah, I wrote from the time I was young. Yeah, okay. And my parents had these wonder books. They're like green encyclopedias they had green spines with gold writing on the front, and they were by alphabet, and they were all along the bottom of our bookcase that was built in Eugene, Oregon, and I would just take one out, lie on the floor, and read it.
That's what I did with the encyclopedia. We had the World Book Encyclopedia, and that's what I
That's
did.
it.
Yeah, the World Book.
Yeah.
They were the greatest thing ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I developed a irrational fear of stonefish, which don't even exist in Oregon, but I would never touch the bottom, you know.
Right.
Yeah, and pyramids and all those things. And then we lived next to a vacant lot, so I could go out and explore the forest on my own. My parents didn't care what I did during the day.
Right. So through high school, in your early college years, and then just past
I
that,
wrote.
You wrote constantly.
That's why I went. I probably couldn't have gotten into to UC Santa Barbara unless I had applied to a special writing program, because I was really rebellious in high school.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't see rebel in you for some reason.
Well,
Am I crazy? I should look harder than I
I'm
guess.
saying things that people don't like in this book. So yeah, I'm rebellious.
Okay.
But it was an antisocial kind of rebellion.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So.
there's a poem in here, "When the Deer Were Here."
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Well, where we live up in top of the world, we used to have these deer that were, when we first moved here in 1997, the deer would just come down the drainage ditch, and they'd be like just wandering down the street through the neighborhood. We had a neighbor who walked his dog really late at night, and we had tomatoes growing out in the front yard, and he'd say, "Hey, you know, every time I walk by, there's a stag in your yard eating your tomatoes." And, you know, and then I'd go and look at my geraniums, and they'd all be decapitated, you
Right.
know. And then we had a 10-year drought, and I never saw the deer again. I guess they're all in the valley. I've heard from people that they see them a lot in Aliso Woods Canyon.
Right.
But for some reason, they're not in our neighborhood anymore. There are other kinds of wildlife.
Right.
It's not like they've been decimated, but, you know, it's just, I sort of miss them. You know, they bothered me before, and now I sort of miss them. Yeah.
I've and as long as I've been here, we're going on 30 years here in town. I've never seen a deer here in the Laguna area, but in Laguna Niguel, I have seen them.
Okay.
So maybe they've moved a little
Well, I
onward that
think
way.
they hang out where the riparian areas are, so where the water tends to run when it rains. And
Right.
there are a lot of places like that over there, but we don't have a lot of rain watersheds in our hills.
Southern California Saint is another poem in
Yeah.
here. You're thinking behind titling it that?
Well, that poem actually won first place in the poetry contest, and that's how I got to know John Gardner.
Okay.
Because John Gardner is the one who founded the Laguna Beach Library Poetry Contest. And it's been going now. This is the 27th year. And he invited me to join Laguna Poets after I wrote that. So that's a really important poem for me. And I think that the idea of a goat herd being a saint, because they're the ones that are protecting us from fire, just made sense to me, you know. And it is like when you hear that clicking on the electric fence, it sounds like rosary beads. So, you know, we're counting prayers with these goats behind the electric fence.
I love your imagination. I love how you take these things and you put and it brings me to this point that pen to paper or ink to paper and the reading and turning pages of a book. I can do that all day, every day. I love to read that way. And for me, it is not the same to see it on a computer screen.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
No, well, the weird thing about me is I'm very audio oriented.
Right.
So my sister's a podcaster, and she pronounces our name the French way, because
The
if
way I
you're
did
a
earlier,
radio
right.
person,
Right.
Catherine Girardeau sounds a lot better than Catherine Girardeau. But Yeah, I just love audiobooks because I can garden, I can do anything, and I can listen to books. And I love to read too, but I always fall asleep with the books by my bed. So I have a huge pile. I call it the Leaning Tower of Reading. And, but the thing is, I realized I wasn't reading enough. So now I read like at least 8 books a month probably, and I read nonfiction and fiction, and then I can read poetry by my bed.
Right.
And because poetry is something that you can read a little bit of and fall asleep, and you don't lose anything.
Right. I haven't yet gotten into audiobooks. Our Lisa Farber, who by the way just texted me and says to say hello. Lisa can do audiobooks. I can't.
Well,
I'm not there yet.
some people can't. Roger hates it. He hates to have something in his ear. And
I will criticize someone's voice. I will think about the other things other than the spoken word.
Yeah, and some of them are really bad. Like I'm listening to a book right now for my book club that was translated from French, and for some reason the grave diggers have Southern accents. And it's like, I can hardly even stand it. I just want to quit.
Does poetry translate well?
Yes. It started out as an audio form. So what people would go around with their instruments, and maybe they were peddling stuff, and they would read poetry too, recite poetry. And that's one reason why John Gardner was so well known and well loved in town, because he had an amazing memory for Shakespeare and all this other beautiful poetry, and he was like a bard. Right. Like the old time bard, and he had a baritone voice, and he had a beautiful smile, and he just sort of spread this energy, poetic energy around, Right. So, I can't do that, but I like to think that I've gotten better at reading over the years, because I'm involved with Third Street Writers, and we have 2 readings every year. And then last year I was invited to read at the presentation of awards for the Ocean Foundation.
Right.
They have that photo contest every year.
Right.
So I read my 2 trash poems at that event. So yeah, I don't like to go to quote unquote just poetry readings. I like it when it's all mixed up.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Because I don't think that we should silo our creativity. I think there are a lot of, and I'm a writer. I spent my career writing, and I didn't go back to poetry till after I lost my job, and I tried to continue to freelance, and the problem is it doesn't pay really anymore. So like the last thing I got published in the LA Times, they published it in a section that doesn't pay.
Right.
And what am I going to say? No, you can't publish it.
Right.
So.
Have you ever thought of, or is there a work of yours that could be a song?
Well, songwriting, even though Bob Dylan won the Nobel Prize for Literature,
right.
Songwriting and poetry are very different, I think. But there are poems that I've written that feel like songs to me.
Right. As I go through this book, not just some of the poems, yes, feel like songs, and they could be.
Yeah.
And then some feel like a dance.
Yeah.
And I don't know how better to describe it other than it feels like a dance.
Yeah.
What am I feeling?
Well, so poetry can take different forms, and a lot of it, particularly in my work, and a lot of people I really love, like Maggie Smith, who's a Columbus-based writer who wrote this poem called Good Bones that went viral, and now she's like a huge sensation. Or Ada Limon, our poet laureate. They rely on sound a lot, so the musicality of sound and rhythm, and the best way to know if a poem works or not is to read it out loud. So
Can I ask you to grace us with a poem?
Sure.
Okay.
What would you like me to read?
Your choice. Your choice out of this magnificent book. By the way,
Thank you.
we are speaking with Ellen, and I'll say it her way, Girardeau Kempler. And if I was to say it for her sister, it would be Girardeau. It's Fire in My Head, Flame in My Heart, Poems for the Pyrocene.
Yeah, I'll read Southern California Equinox.
Okay.
Is that all right?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, this is Southern California Equinox after Michael Longley. Spring arrives as a flute note, a sudden trill carried on warm wind, a melodious invitation to accompaniment from every incoming bird. The sweetest song from the plainest wren, perched tipsily on our chimney top. The raucous shouts of bright feathered jays, begging for peanuts on the garden fence. The predatory cries of circling hawks, riding updrafts, spying gopher holes. The anxious mother quails, Chicago calls from deep inside trailside brush. Her cheeping chicks appearing and disappearing in wavering lines, crowned with tiny feather hats, all settling into march step with the changing rise of light, the sun growing more intense, Mercury inching up, each day a gradual shift that soon becomes a recalibrated sense of hope. When cricket concertos yield to cicada buzz, frog song gives way to parched grass brass. The powdery scent of sagebrush takes winter's place, making every animal forget. The silver arpeggios of rain, the muddy squelch of wet.
Absolutely beautiful. And as I read through this book on my own, I was awestruck by probably your shortest work that you dedicated to John Gardner, and it's called Bones. Would you
Yeah, sure.
would you grace us with that?
I'll read that.
And it really is, to me, this one tugs at the soul more than just about anything else. And why did you dedicate it to John?
Well, because this poem I read at his memorial, but I wrote it right after he died, And everybody, it was very sudden. He had a heart attack, and everybody in the community was just trying to grapple with it, bring it together and talk about him and tell stories. And it was very, very weird. It was just, I was watching this happen and thinking, what is going on? Then I was outside in the garden, I was pruning a tree, and all of a sudden this poem comes to me, and it just came, the whole thing. It never happens. That never happens. And John used to say sometimes that some poems were gifts.
Right.
And this, I feel, was a gift from him, And so anyway, it's called Bones for John Abbott Gardner. When a beloved dies, we gather like elephants to mourn the bones, touching each foot, ankle, femur, rib, vertebrae, shoulder, stroking the pelvis, jaw, cranium, moving each one separately with our trunk fingers, as if by memorizing and lifting each one, we could reanimate body, spirit, self.
That's beautiful.
And the idea is that, you've probably heard that elephants do, when a member of their family dies, they go and they touch the bones with their trunks,
Right. This is magnificent. This book is magnificent. You are incredible. And where can we find the book?
You can find the book at Laguna Beach Books, and I'm telling everyone it's widely available. I mean, you could get it anywhere you want. I also am consigning books when, like selling books when I do an event, and I might be doing a reading at our library at the end of June. I'm still trying to confirm it, but I also am saying, please don't buy it on Amazon, because what is Amazon supporting now? It's not a bookstore. It's supporting book bans, bans on free speech, deportations, cuts to art museums and libraries and public television and public radio. And, I just don't think we should be supporting that, and we don't need to get our books right away. So if you can't go to an independent bookstore and order it and wait a few days, or you can pick it up right now at Laguna Beach Books, or you can go to a website called bookshop.org, and they have a drop-down menu where you can support whatever bookstore you want. Also, Powell's Books in Oregon has a great online store, and they're selling it. And I've, on my bookshop.org page, I'm supporting Octavia's Bookshop, which is a store in Altadena, which has been providing community support to fire victims. So
that's wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
And one final note, because you touched on it, so I want to, before I let you go, currently across the country and even here in California and even closer here in Southern California, they are removing books from libraries in schools. Just a quick thought on that.
Well, I'm on the Friends of the Library Board. That's not so much of a problem here, but you've probably heard what's happening in Huntington Beach.
Right. I'm speaking specifically of them.
The thing is, books in libraries are accessible to everyone. It's one of the last places where you can go and just sit and not have to pay for it. And they have public restrooms, and they have wonderful people who can help you find what you're looking for and order it if it's not there. And, the problem with cutting the Institute of Library and Museum Services is that even if your library doesn't get funded from that organization, the ones that are really going to be hurt from that are the rural libraries. And so that means bookmobiles that bring you books, and I just would hate a lot of people who don't have money. That's how they find out about what they're gifted at. They look at art books, or they look at books by artists, and they get inspired. And so, yeah.
The book is Fire in My Head, Flame in My Heart, Poems for the Pyrocene. Ellen Girardeau Kempler. Thank you so very much for spending time with us. And
thank you, Ed.
Before the read at the library, when you solidify that date, please come on back.
Okay, sure. I'd be glad to. Thank you very much.
We'd love to have you. 11:38 the time. It's the Mornings with Ed show. It's the all-new voice of Laguna.
Well, I was born up in the mountains